Who's this? Dr. Mona. We have to meet. Don't tell me. Someone you trust can betray you.
Turning's on the third floor. Just go down this corridor, turn right, take the first elevator.
For this opportunity to come before you today, and I respectfully request that you approve my nomination to have the privilege to serve this Commonwealth. Most of my career and experience is contained in my application and questionnaire, which has been submitted to you, but I want to take a few moments to tell you about myself and why I would want to become a judge in the housing court. I'm the eldest of 3 children to Joseph E. Kelleher Jr., Patricia Kelleher, a retired physician and nursery school teacher, and 2 terrific parents. They could not be here today due to health reasons, but they are with me in spirit. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. Our parents always instilled in us the value and the importance of education, hard work, and giving back to the community. I have vivid memories from my childhood, my parents taking me to Haley House and Pine Street Inn a few times each year to work in the soup kitchen, feed the homeless and those less fortunate. And I remember one of the first times we were there, I think I was 10 or 11, and there was an individual sitting by himself. My mother pointed him out to me and said, "Go talk to that man." And I said, "Mom, what am I going to say?" And she said, "Listen." And that was something that she asked us to do each and every time. And after a few times, that was something I did, was expected of us. And my mom was trying to teach us a lesson that no matter who you are, where you are, you have a voice, you should be treated with dignity and respect, and you should be heard. I went on to Providence College, and the Dominican friars continued and instilled that message of education, hard work, and giving back to the community, and those are values I hold today. I graduated from New England Law in Boston in 1995 and embarked upon my legal career. For over 18 years, I've served the town of Marshfield in volunteering with the advisory board, the zoning board of appeals, and just recently in the board of selectmen, and my term ended at the end of June. It is something I truly enjoyed in giving back to the community. And this enjoyment really began with the zoning board of appeals, where I could take my experience in life, my knowledge of the law, and help individuals. People would often come in front of us that are unrepresented, worrying about their homes, the properties of the businesses. And I knew and always believed in the importance of protecting homes, properties, and people's communities. And I did my best to apply the law to the facts, and I truly enjoyed the experience to try to make the community better. I've been a lawyer for 25 years, and 22 of those years I've been practicing in the housing court. I've appeared in housing courts from Barnstable to Berkshire County throughout, and appeared in front of many judges. from Judge Kerry Kakis, Judge Chaplin, Judge Edwards, Judge Salvito, Judge Michaud in the Southeast Housing Court, to Judge Theophilus, Judge Bagdoyan, Judge Sharing in Metro South, to Judge Kierman, Judge Dalton, Judge Giroto, and Chief Justice Sullivan in Northeast, Judge Horan in Worcester, and Judge Fine in Fields in the Western Division. I've watched, absorbed, and learned from these justices, observed how the different divisions of the Housing Court works and function. I've seen what works and what could be improved upon. I welcome that opportunity to bring those experiences to the Housing Court. Most of us take for granted our homes. It's a refuge after a long and stressful day. We don't give it much thought throughout the day. However, many of us are not that lucky. We're worrying about the conditions in our home, whether we're going to be evicted, if we're a landlord, whether we're going to lose our investment and thus our 401k or our retirement. For those individuals, it consumes you, your thoughts, your days, and your lives. Here in Massachusetts, we are very fortunate to have a statewide housing court that can address the issues facing towns, tenants, and landlords with judges who are knowledgeable in a myriad of issues that specialize in housing, whether it's non-payment of rent, safety, drugs, and foreclosures. The housing court, unlike any other court, is a community court. It travels from community to community and is there to help the community for both the tenants and the landlords. The housing court is there to keep us stable, not only as a community, but as a commonwealth. And that is why I've enjoyed so much practicing in the housing court. And I respectfully request the honor and the opportunity to serve this great commonwealth. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. The first counselor to ask questions is my good friend from District 3, Counselor Marilyn Petito.
Thank you for all the time for me. It was 4 hours full and we moved together.
We did.
I am very impressed with you and your background. And I first want to apologize that you were not allowed to have a witness. You have 4 family members, but no witness. And I know that Michael's Marisco. Oh, you can't hear anything I said?
I can hear you.
Oh my God. Okay, let me start again. First of all, thank you for the 4 hours that you afforded me. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I got to know, you know, the person rather than just person on a paper. I have my personal apology that you were not allowed to have a witness. You have 4 family members, but no witness. And that's very important to me. And I am especially disappointed because Michael Marisco wanted to come and be a witness, and he did send a letter. And he is the town administrator in Marshfield. And he, if I'm allowed, he said, you know, he said that, can I say in lieu of him not being here? No, I can't do that. Okay, I'm not allowed to do that. Okay, but anyway, we did get.
I'm going to refer to these letters that we have received.
Okay, good. All right, good. That's good. Okay, that's fine. So anyway, you know, so as I said, I am impressed. How many trials have you had in your legal, since you've been representing in the housing court?
Not counting summary process trials, I would say over 60.
Okay. Now, were on the zoning board. Are you still on the zoning board?
No, I
Okay.
resigned.
I think that is, you know, having been a city councilor, a zoning board is a great experience. I mean, that really gave you the, ability to take on some of the opponents that come into a courthouse, because, you know, I was sat through a lot of zoning board hearings and they're tough, and you have to be fair and you have to be strong. And, you know, I think that's great. And also a selectman.
I was.
Yeah.
After the zoning board appeal.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Well, you know, as I've always said, the most important thing first, I should say, is empathy and compassion. And 25 years you've had experience, and you know, I'm very pleased about that. Now, in the housing court, what would you say is the right now aside from the pandemic, what is the real challenge of housing court in these days?
Well, the obvious is going to be when it opens back up, the moratorium is dealing with those issues, prioritizing them. So that's going to be the biggest issue in housing.
So you've represented both landlords and tenants,
Yes.
right? In housing, what do you feel is the most challenging right now in housing for people out there to get a house, to rent, to get a voucher, all of that? I mean, you know, how do you navigate through this?
Are you asking the challenge when they come into
Yeah,
housing
as
court?
a judge, yeah.
A lot of people that come into the housing court are pro se. And in the challenge, and that's where the importance of the housing specialist is to refine the issues so that when it gets in front of the judge, it can be, the judge knows and can address those issues that are pertinent to the case. That's been my experience.
What is your position on the bill for tenants that it's going to expire in August, but I'm hearing that it's going to be continued?
I saw last night with Governor Baker extended it 60 days.
Yeah. Do you have any objections about any of it, or?
Based upon the decisions that he has shown throughout this pandemic, and the numbers speak for it, which is remarkable, I support his decision, but I share the same concerns that he said in the letter about the small-time landlords. I hope those can be addressed within the next 60 days.
You know, there are people who are trying to rent, and the federal, you know, the federal allowance does not go with the, you know, they're supposed to pay half or whatever, and it isn't enough for people to rent an apartment because the apartments are, you know, going sky high. That's the federal grant. We used to have a state grant, if you remember, and that was shut off. Do you think there's any possibility or anything that you could advocate to have, you know, that voucher system replaced in the state?
I don't know if we could do that at the housing board level. I know that Governor Baker and Toledo have housing bills to address this.
Well, I was just saying, we just had someone that you passed in the hall. We just had another hearing, and I had said that in Watertown, this was about 5 years ago, and there actually were people who came in a bus and stayed overnight and sat on the curb there waiting for the office to open to apply for Section 8. And at that time, it was 5 years, and I know it's much more than that. And I know to get into housing, it's over 5 years. So I don't know. I mean, you don't have, you know, a magic wand to do about that. But are those the cases that you have seen in the last 25 years that are increasing now, or, you know, what's the change since you started in this field in housing?
I've seen a lot of issues with mental health. And I think that's where programs like the tenancy preservation program become make a tenancy sustainable for someone that's fallen behind, where they could get up to $4,000 and then the tenancy would be sustained. Whereas before that, if someone was that far behind, it was very difficult to sustain tenancy.
Yeah, you know, it's some of the cases you've had, I mean, and you stood up and you have been, you know, you stood firm and you kept your composure, and that's what I see, and that's what I've heard about you. So what was the most difficult case that you've had? Whether maybe a trial case that you had?
Good question. Probably there's two that stick out in my mind and I put them in my application. One was where the individual had lost the home to foreclosure and had been evicted, and we were able to. And this was a home that had been in his family. He grew up in that home. His parents gave it to him, and we were able to show that the foreclosure had been done improperly, and we're able to get the home back into his title, into his name. And then in a subsequent action, obtained some damages for him for having he was a single father, having he and his son moved out. The other one was another case I listed in there. It was, and it's now up at the SJC. It's regarding manufactured housing community where it was in the housing court with Judge Edwards, where my client purchased a manufactured park, and it was different rents, a disparity in rents, and it was dealing with a class action lawsuit. It had a lot of novel issues that hadn't been addressed by the Commonwealth, and that's why the SJC recently took it from the appeals court.
Right. You know, the prices of houses have risen so much that, you know, middle class can't really, you know, afford it, you know, and that's the problem. And in the years of wait to get into housing, or even the vouchers. Have you seen a real increase in people coming to the housing court from the time that you first started?
Yes, it's been dramatic.
It's busy.
And as it's become statewide, and more people come to the housing court than the district court just because of the resources the housing court has, the district court doesn't.
And age-wise, what is it? All ages, or do you have more of one?
I think it's all ages.
You know, I'm very impressed with all of your work. I mean, I really am, and it's what I like to see that you, and I like, you know, contributions. You know, you came here the old-fashioned way, you earned it. You know, I like that.
Thank you.
So, you know, you've had cases where there's been violent, you know, matters that have happened. Tell me how you got through those kind of cases.
Those are difficult. I mean, you always, when the clients going through it, just try to keep them calm and always to look at the big picture. Because in what's your end goal, and never to lose sight of that. Because often people can get lost. As a law professor said, you get lost in the forest, you can't see the trees.
Now you've gone before a lot of judges. What have you learned not to do by some of the judges that you didn't think were, you know, had the right demeanor or, you know, a fairness?
I think all the judges I listed had the right demeanor. The thing I would is sometimes, and it's difficult when a tendency is not sustainable, that you have to, in the end, protect the landlord as well. And just it needs to end. And it's okay to give someone a second, maybe in a third chance, the right circumstances, but at certain point in time, it's not sustainable. You're there for both landlords and tenants.
And we talked about, you know, people coming to the court at the same time. And I asked you, how would you manage that to be more fair?
Well, I think you're asking how I prioritize it. Yeah, I think a lot of times you have to look at, are you dealing with an issue that's the safety and health of the other residents or the landlord, because those can be immediate. And then with the non-payment cases, are we dealing with an issue where the landlord can't meet his upkeep of the property or his mortgage? Because as the SJC has said, the loss of rent can be irreparable harm. And that's something, as a housing court judge, I feel as though you should follow.
How would you like to change the housing court from your experience, what you see? Is there anything that you would like to see changed?
I think having a staggered docket would help. I've seen that in the probate court, where they have a call to list at 8:30 and then another call to list at 10:30. And this was pre-COVID, and I noticed that there was fewer people in the courtroom who seemed to move along the cases, whereas you'd be there all morning, you'd be out now.
Okay. So if you are appointed, when would you be serving, and what is happening in the housing court? Because I know they're just taking emergency, you know, cases in the various courts. So what will that mean to you now?
Well, you can file an application for an emergency hearing for a summary process action. The judge looks at it and determines whether it's an essential eviction under the act, and then you can have a hearing. And I would, as far as serving, whenever they're ready, I'm ready. I'm ready to serve.
So, you started out as a general practitioner.
Yes.
Okay, tell me the process, how you got to the housing court. What was your interest that got you there?
The housing court kind of found me rather than me finding the housing court. It just was the law office I was in. They represented landlords and tenants. Just kind of, and it just something I liked, and it just seemed to blossom and grow.
Yeah. Well, they'll miss you on the zoning board, won't they, huh? How long have you been on the zoning board?
It was on for almost 14 years.
Wow, wow. And you know, and you're elected. You're appointed or elected?
Appointed to the zoning board, elected to the select.
Okay, all right. So you've seen, a lot of things in your own town. I think that gives you a great background being on the zoning board. So have you represented more landlords or more tenants?
More landlords.
Landlords?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. On that legislation for the tenants, do the landlords get any benefit at all? Because I was saying that, like, if it was a two-family and the landlord lived in one apartment, just a middle-class, guy with his family, and now with that legislation, tenants, are pardoned from, paying rent and everything, and it's a hard thing for them. It's hard for both. But what about the landlord? I mean, he has to make the mortgage. I mean, are they going to foreclose on him for these couple of months that he's not being able to make it?
Well, the moratorium applies to foreclosures as well. So there cannot be any foreclosures. And also in the act, there's a part of it that allows the landlord, they have a first and last month's rent. It's often paid. And the tenant has not paid, they can use the last month's rent towards a missed payment. And there's a procedure for the landlord to do that, which I think is something that So
what was it that interests you? I mean, housing, we don't hear a lot of attorneys going into a housing court. We hear them on the district court and, criminal lawyers and real estate lawyers and so forth. How did that interest you? I mean, was it from your private practice that you saw that, or for zoning board, or what was it?
Combination of both. It was the private practice and it was from the zoning board. And I just like I don't have questions for you. I'm I've always said I don't have a poker face, and I was just so pleased with your background, with your trial experience in the zoning board. I think adds more, and I just found you to be very patient. And I've said it always, I look for empathy and compassion, and you have it. You really do, and you care. So I'm just happy that you got through and you were appointed. And I have to tell you, I have voted for great people on that, on the housing court, really good. And I just have my own opinion that it's not a political courthouse that most attorneys look for. So if they're going to go political, they don't usually look for the housing court. That's my experience in 21 years. But you'll be a great fit, and I am just so pleased. And it was such a pleasure, the 4 hours. And I hope you didn't hit a lot of traffic getting home. That's all. No, it was a breeze getting home.
Yeah.
It was like that every time.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councilor, for your thoughtful questions. Next, we'll hear from Councilor Joseph Farrar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you again, Attorney Kelleher. We met some time ago, and your reputation far exceeds what whoever you could have brought in live today. So I appreciate you not bringing in people live today. We didn't allow any last week, and today we had one person by webinar. It's great that you brought your family home. Probably one of the biggest days of your life, I'm sure. Yes. I just want to say, as a former police chief, retired, that thank you for your service as a selectman. That's a thankless job, and I thank you for your service on the zoning board of appeals. Also a very meaningful job, but sometimes thankless as well. Your resume is outstanding. I've heard from lawyers, I've heard from judges, I've heard from magistrates that you have not only the knowledge and expertise, but your temperament is perfect for the job. So I'm happy to tell you I'll be voting for you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Robert?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good
to you.
afternoon.
So your experience has been with landlords more than tenants.
Yes,
So what kind of a judge are you going to be on the housing court? Landlord?
I'm not going to be for either the landlords or the tenants. I'm going to take the facts and apply them to the law.
Well, everybody says that. I don't really know what that means, because what the law means to you may not mean the same thing to the guy in the next courtroom next to you, right?
True.
So you interpret the law.
Yes,
That's why we have appeals courts.
yes.
So is your interpretation going to be more for tenants or more for landlords?
I don't think it's going to be for either side, sir. I mean, I did start off with representing primarily tenants. I still represent tenants.
Right.
And, I try to apply it fairly.
But I mean, you've been around the courts a long time, and you know that judges get a reputation.
Yes,
Some judges are in the housing court, they're more oriented to landlords. Some are more oriented to tenants, right?
yes,
It's just the way they are.
yes.
So if 5 years down the road, I walk into a housing court and I ask about you, what are they going to say?
I would hope they say fair.
I would hope so too. But I just want you to remember that citizens of the Commonwealth are paying for all of this, and they're going to pay for your nice salary that you're going to get when you become a judge. So don't forget them.
I won't.
Have some compassion for them, okay?
I will.
I got calls from Senator Pat O'Connor, and I got a long call from my good friend Matt McDonough from Marshfield, who I respect very much. And you live in Marshfield, right?
I do.
Cordwood Circle.
Yes.
Where is that? I lived in Marshfield for 10 years. I don't know where that is.
Do you know where Luz is? It was?
Lose 139?
Yeah.
I went there in the early 70s.
There's now a development behind there, and we live in that
Oh,
development.
behind there, huh?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Luz isn't there anymore.
No, I know it, yeah. I got a big Tedeschi's. Don't they have a Tedeschi supermarket or
It's Roche Brothers,
Roach Brothers?
and then we're right past.
Yeah, none of that was there. So did you grow up in Marshfield?
I did not.
Where'd you grow up?
Wellesley.
Oh, from the wealthy community. Did you live in a mansion out there?
No, 3-bedroom.
3-bedroom? Yeah. What'd your father do for a living?
He was a physician.
He was, okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Eileen Duff is on the webcam. Any questions, Councilor Duff?
Thank you. Good to see you, Mr. Kelleher. I also received a call from your state representative, Patrick Kearney, who is a big fan and made a point to reach out in support of you. You know, we just had a very rigorous hearing right before you. And I don't want to I don't want to belabor this any longer than it needs to be, but the issues that you're going to be facing is court probably in the next year or two in the entire Commonwealth. How have you prepared yourself for this? I mean, it's, as you know, I'm referring to the pandemic and the absolute upheaval in not just housing, but the economy, which is going to directly impact who you're seeing and what happens. Could you share some of that with me? I can't hear you.
Sorry. And you're asking how I would prepare for what's upcoming when the moratorium is lifted? Just, it was a break there.
Not just the moratorium. And the fact that, you know, frankly, what this pandemic, I think, has highlighted more than anything is the economic insecurity in the country and in the Commonwealth, in the sheer lack of affordable housing. And I don't just want to say affordable housing, because people think of you know, housing projects and things when you say that. I'm talking about housing that is affordable. I'm a realtor, and I've never seen anything like this. I bought my first when I was 23 years old. This is, and I'm older than that now. This is really different than anything we've ever been in. And it's going to the economic impact of what is happening, the perfect storm of the pandemic and the economy really being so tenuous. In regardless of where you stand, I mean, these are facts. What are you, one of the things that concerns me about some of the judges in the courts is, how are you going to deal with, I mean, you will be evicting people. You are going to see some of the most horrific things you've ever seen. Heart-wrenching, heartbreaking. But as somebody who was a landlord and frankly was forced to sell my home, my property, which was my retirement, I'm self-employed, and I lost my entire retirement because of a tenant who refused to pay rent. I gave them cash for keys, and I still had to go to housing court to get them out, and they still wouldn't leave. It was really unbelievable. And this is what I do for a living, so I know a lot more than a lot of people do about it. So I'm talking about it's the perfect storm of landlords and people landlords losing houses and people not having houses. Share with me your thoughts. What have you done? What have you done?
What I would think is that, as I said earlier, that the housing court is a community court. It travels from community to community. So it's there to help preserve the community. It's just like in litigation, you always have to know what's your end goal. And I think that is the end goal, not when you go in there, is to make sure you're applying the law fairly and to sustain the community. Is the tenancy sustainable? If it's not, then unfortunately, then you'll have to terminate it and evict the person. And that's not something that anyone should take lightly. But you also have to protect the landlords, because the story you just shared is one that is probably going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it, but we need to minimize that from occurring. Because those, as the governor said in his letter, the small-time landlords are the ones that are going to be most affected by this. So it's keeping that goal in mind, that you have to preserve the community, see if you can preserve the community, make it stable as a housing court judge. That's what you're there.
Well, in the real right now, it's out of the extension of the word. I mean, the stuff they're having with the governor, and so he's caught a hard plate. But you're going to be dealing with it. Judge nominate, not just to apply the law, but to be bold and interpret the law. Are you open to your own interpretation of the law?
Yes, yes, I would be. Yes.
Okay, because that's an interesting, Councilor Jubenville gave a very, very rigorous questioning and cross-examination of the last applicant, and with some very good and pointed, difficult questions. You're lucky he didn't ask these of you, but what some of it focused on was how bold are you willing to be? How strong are you willing to buck the system and be more of someone who's writing the law instead of just interpreting it? I don't know what the right answer is, and I don't know if you've thought about it.
Well, if it's a case that hasn't been dealt with before, an issue that hasn't occurred, which I've had in my career, then I'm willing to interpret it, and as you said, be bold if there's no guidance from the higher courts. I mean, that's what we're there to do, to interpret it. And I would stand up for what I thought was right, because that's what you have to do as a judge. I mean, at the end, you have to make the tough call. You can't pass the buck.
Okay. You know what? I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Terry Kennedy.
I don't have any questions for the nominee. I just want to say that I've known you practically since the day you started practicing law. Not the first. You have been, I think we had a case against each other on the last time we interacted. And you have been fantastic in which you practice. Certainly practiced in a very professional, ethical way. You always were on top of what the legal issues were. Whenever I've seen you before, I used to see you taking down the old Plymouth District Court of 41. I just think you're going to be a fantastic judge. I've only long enough to ask you questions. We've had a number of conversations over the last several weeks about different issues. I think you're a home run. I'm voting for it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Mary Hurley.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
I would indicate that the fact that you left Smith and Rink in short order at the beginning of your career speaks volumes about you, all positive, number one. Number two, I applaud your service to the public. I understand you're currently the chairman of the Marshfield Board of Selectmen, which is a thankless job. And if you have the patience for that, I would have the patience necessary to be a good housing court judge. I've looked at your materials, we talked, and I think you're going to do a great job. It is going to be absolutely hectic at the beginning once the moratorium is lifted, and just hope that you take leaving your worries about all the cases that you heard that day at the courthouse door. It's going to be tough, but I think that you've got the ability and the credentials to do it. So I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I don't have any questions. We had a long conversation. I was very impressed with what you told me about your history. We do have 4 letters in the file. I'm obviously not going to read them, but every counselor will have an opportunity if they would like to look at the file. I think you're going to be a great addition to the housing court, and when your name comes before us, I will be more than happy to support you. Thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing. My understanding from Lauren is, I believe, 1:30. We're back here. I guess Lieutenant Governor's going to be on time, and we're ready to go at 1:30.